Every culture that's ever existed has tried desperately to draw upon the life forces of nature, and it's caused the most bloody and horrible blood sacrifices, human sacrifice, somehow to get the heart of what causes life. Universally, it's symbolized as the Spirit. Even around the throne of God in heaven, we have every reason to believe that one of the original symbols there was a serpent. We look at the emblem of Dan, we see both the eagle and the serpent there around the sanctuary. The eagle today stands in the place representing omniscience, but over it, over the whole thing, once the covering cherub was Lucifer. When he came to this earth, he took that symbol of the serpent, the symbol of divinity, and he used it to deceive Adam and Eve. And before that flood came, somehow through amalgamation and genetics, he made the dragon or the serpent the ruler of that ancient nature world. It was a terrible situation. Every culture of the world has this great winged serpent now, and there's no place that it's found anywhere in nature today. In Egypt, the Scarabito was a symbol of life. The wearing of jewelry was to draw upon these cosmic forces. All the way through the history, the fascination of the mysteries has attracted people, from the astrology of the Chaldeans to all the mysteries of the occult world. Somehow they wanted to peer into the other side and gain an understanding or a control over the forces of nature. The Jews, when they left Babylon, became the leaders in this movement. An example, years later, a man by the name of John Dee, or Dr. D, was financed and supported by a number of royalties in Europe to carry on occult experiments, and here he is here calling up the dead and talking to them. The history of the secret societies is really the history of how the occult has continued, and in a direction that will one day cover the whole world. Ellen White says that everything is being planned out in those secret societies, even Satan's coming, and that's in evangelism, and I was going to read that at this point, but it's very clear. In the secret societies, even Satan coming with all lines and sign wonders, counterfeit Christ is being planned out there. But as we look in the old temple of the Templars, we realize that there, even in Catholicism, it was the priests, and in this order of knights, they worshiped the occult. This was the goat of the Baphomet that they kissed in their initiation and then broke the cross and threw it on the floor. This is why when Masonry was publicly persecuted as a facade for the church, the leaders fled into England, and in 1770, they established this magnificent lodge. There are over 200 Masonic lodges reside in it today. All of those people that take those initiations, initiation is a code word in the occult for possession of evil spirits or possession of the spirits. These people take their initiation and they enter into these symbols which on the surface look to be Jewish or Christian but are really occult. If you look at these two pillars, they're supposed to be the pillars before Solomon's temple, Joachim and Boaz, but if you look at them, one has stars representing astrology or the heavens or the metaphysical world, and the other the earth representing the physical. The idea of dualism, of the occult astrology worship is there. Even inside, the Bible is used as a symbol, but it's not a Christian organization. In fact, in San Francisco, the Masonic Lodge, I looked at this replica of Solomon's temple. It's true it had been a magnificent temple, 600 feet tall. It was one of the most beautiful buildings the world had ever seen. And when you look closely, it looks kind of like a Jewish temple, but the closer you get, you see symbols of Babylon and Egypt and the occult all over it. There, Solomon's temple is the temple of soul, or the temple of the sun. And here in these Masonic staffs, you can see the sun and the moon held up in their initiation rites. On the eastern wall is the pentagram, which is a form of the goat's head. It represents the rulers of the dark forces, or Satan. And in their own books, I have quotations. I would read them at this time, but we're going to have to go through this thing real fast. And that they say that this represents Lucifer and Satan. The G represents God, Gnosis, generation, gematria, goat, and Garden of Venus, all symbols of this sexual life force in nature. Well, another one of their symbols is a cubic stone, 6 sides and 12 lines. It represents the universe. They have a branch for Islam, they have a branch for Protestantism, and they have a branch for the Jewish or the Hebrew people. Each one of these branches is a means that the Roman Catholic Church is using to draw people into an organization that appears to be against Catholicism, but as they initiate all the way up to the top through the different ranks of Masonry, they find at the top there's one secret doctrine, one universal religion, the religion of Lucifer. And if I'll tell you something, I have documents from their books for everything I'm saying to you right now. And if a Mason says to you, oh, that isn't true, that guy's just not telling the truth, that man doesn't even know what his own people teach. And they admit in their own material that they lie to their own people. When they say our Father, it's Satan that they're worshiping. Adam Weishaupt was an occultist as well as a Jesuit. He claimed to be able to levitate and to do theurgy, call up demonic spirits and things like that. And so those teachings were carried on within the Illuminati. When the communism burst upon the world through the work of Mazzini and men like Albert Pike, it also carried with it, in its secret recesses, a group that actually worshipped Satan under the name Lucifer. And in their meetings, public meetings with many more people than this, one that was described, a woman that was on stage, lift off the platform and floated over the audience, and her clothes burned up in a great blaze of fire, and a demon appeared next to her. And there for quite a while she flitted and floated, and there was music and noises and sounds, and that was their meeting. And then she came and sat down, and when she exhaled 360 some odd times, and they counted the number of spirits in that situation. That's what these men are like that are at the head and control of international conspiracy. And only God's Spirit are holding this back. Marx works with these people. You can read it in their letters that he was part of these. And when you see the slaughter caused by the communist world, they have killed at least 200 million people since their start. It took the Catholic Church 1,500 years to approach those type of figures. This group killed them all within a matter of decades. And they're taking the world today. Horrible slaughters, destruction of one country after another in Cambodia and so on. But many of our presidents have been master Masons. Mussolini was a Satanist. Hitler was a member of the Thule and the Vril Society, both Hindu societies. He was a possessed man, and he had a Jesuit on one side, and he had a witch on the other that took care of him and guided his thinking. Himmler was an occultist. They were searching under the earth. They were searching everywhere to find the power of the Vril, a power that they believed that a society underneath the earth of mystic, advanced beings controlled. They hoped that somehow through a supernatural activity of transition and through genetics, they would take a great leap in human evolution and get us into the Aryan race as a whole world. And this is what these strange SS troops were dedicated for, and the Jesuits were right there walking along with them. We see a continuation of these thoughts and these feelings about race taking place today. Real spiritualism began with these two Fox sisters in Hydesville, and within a very short period of time there was 100 mystics in the area of Rochester, New York, and this thing burst into existence at the same time in 12 countries of the world, just overnight. As Satan saw God's people teaching the Sabbath at that time, that's when the Sabbath came in, immediately spiritualism burst out in tremendous power, and immediately another French Revolution burst out in France. See, the end is always close when God's people are ready to give the message. Always close. But men like D.D. Holmes and men like Leonora Piper and Eusebius Palladino were looked at by a world that had rejected the Bible, and their psychic phenomenon were studied. They believed it was from their mind. These people, many of them could fly, float off the ground right in front of these scientists. They were able to all kinds of phenomenon around them. In the Masonic lodges, they were carrying out the activities of mesmer, hypnotism. Mesmer got this material from a Jesuit priest in one of the courts in Europe. Yeah, one of the strangest places that has ever existed was the home of these two boys called the Eddy brothers. After the Civil War, they set up a lodge for spiritualists where on stage beings, spiritualistic beings would manifest in this broad stage seance type of setup. A man there who was a lawyer, he was a genius, there's no doubt about that, a man who had broken away from his family, was searching out the occult, and he came to this place in Tennessee to see the Eddy brothers, and while he was there, he met a Russian mystic by the name of Madame Blavatsky. The minute Madame oh boy, I'll never be able to speak Russian. Madame Blavatsky arrived, all of a sudden, everything started acting Russian on stage. People dressed up in old Russian, the demons started manifesting. She was a powerful mystic. And these two worked together to establish a new society, a society that would bring spiritualism into the realm of science, into the realm of the upper classes of the world. The society was called the Theosophy Society, the study of deity, the study of God, or the knowledge of God. And she published a book called Isis Unveiled, which was to present the secret doctrine behind all views. But it wasn't until 1888 that the occult world had the foundation of the doctrines that would be their base for world denomination of the occult. And that book, published in 1888, when God was trying to revive the everlasting gospel in the Adventist church, was called A Secret Doctrine. In just a few years, 1893, when Jones was before Congress and God was working through that messenger of God to stop the Sunday law, they were speaking before a united religious congress at the World Fair at the same time, you see. And if you watch this, you see it going. There's a reason why the New Age is in ascendancy today, because God's people know more about righteousness by faith than he has ever known in the history of this church today. Annie Besant took over the spiritual leadership of the society. After that, she worked in the government of India. Due to her guidance, she placed after her in control Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was a theosophist. Leadbeater was an example of a theosophist. He was a severe homosexual, and because of an issue that took place over homosexuality, the largest branch of the Theosophy Society revolted against the order, and that was a society here in Australia. There is a tremendous influence of Theosophy and occultism here in Australia. Krishnamurti was to be the first Messiah. Maitreya was supposed to take possession of him. At the point where he started talking in the first person, when he started talking to people, they knew that the spirit of the Maitreya had taken over him, and immediately they tried to get him to the United States because they knew that was going to be the center of the activity in this world. And when they got him, he started going to New York Harbor. All of a sudden, the spirit left him. And so now he's a teacher in the occult, but he has no power, and they're waiting now for the next one. Manly P. Hall bases everything on the secret doctrine of Mrs. Blavatsky, and it's an interesting thing. He's the Masonics' leading qualified writer in the occult sciences. In 1844, a man by the name of Levy was born. This man, first a Christian evangelist and leader, became a leading occultist and claimed that Jesus, when he came to this earth, went to the Orient and learned all, and the East, and learned all of his mysteries, and that one of the Bibles in the New Age is called the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, describing this. Another branch of the Theosophy Society, another spin-off, was the Arcane School by Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey coined many of the phrases that you hear spoken throughout the world today considering the New Age movement. She is the one more than any other that brought the New Age thinking of the occultism around to appearing to be a Christian movement. And Ellen White said it would become more like Christianity until they were hardly distinguishable at the end of time. And largely due to her work, she was a prolific writer. She probably wrote as much as Ellen White. Many of these people under demonic writing did this. But she dealt in the area of spiritualism coming into politics. The opportunity for the spiritual leaderships hiding in the back to come to the front and become the leaders openly in the world. This is a center that she established, and on the door I noticed there was a whole bunch of symbols of the zodiac on it, and I noticed the O and the V. That O and the V comes from the back of the cobra. It's the serpent god that these people claiming to be Christians in the New Age are worshiping. In the old Chaldean alphabet, Hebrew alphabet, Greek alphabet, and even our American alphabet, the sixth letter is relative to the V, the vowel, the waw, and it's interesting, we call it the F, but it's interchangeable with the V, so we can say life or live, you see. All these things go back to ancient Babylon. When I walked into the meditation room, there were crystals in the floor. This idea of electricity being concentrated in crystals, you can find it everywhere in the occult. But I was shocked when I looked over on one side of the room, and there was a picture of Jesus Christ. You see? They worship Jesus Christ as this mystic master, as Adam Weishaupt had established early in the movement. On the other side, the Buddha. And both of these men are worshipped together. A place nearby called the World University of America, another example of this movement. They teach the New Age teaching there, and there the symbol is the same symbol that's on your dollar bill, Adam Weishaupt's symbol. Benjamin Cream came up with $200,000 of his own funds to support the publication that the Christ is now here in 20 major newspapers throughout the world. But it didn't happen, and because of that, many people have lost interest in this particular branch of the New Age conspiracy. Don't think this is the only part. It's only a small part of it, really. He wrote a book called The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom, and they believe that Christ now resides in the body of a Pakistani in London, now just ready to emerge to the world. And it says that this man gives up-to-date information about the emergence of into the world, now the masters of wisdom, and so on. The Aquarian Conspiracy by Marilyn Ferguson points out it is an international movement on all walks of life, that it's a transformation taking place in the whole world, and nothing is untouched by it. Not even our dear Adventist Church is untouched by it. Loma Linda teaches classes in the New Age, and all of their staff have to take these classes as part of the curriculum. It's a sad situation, let me tell you. What they teach is that every 2,000 years the sun passes into a new phase, 24,000 years in its rotation. Each one of these is an age. And each time God comes in human form, in a man, and he becomes the avatar for that age. In the last age, the age of Pisces, they taught Jesus was the avatar. Now, the Christ will come in a different body. The word Maitreya is a Buddhist name. When the Buddhists saw the teachings of Christianity spreading throughout the world, they came up with a counterfeit for the coming of Christ, and they called him Maitreya. And now that counterfeit is being promoted throughout the world by an international Hindu movement. It's centered in Tibet. The Dalai Lama leads out, and this from there. And this is all documented. This is all a fact. It's kept very secret, but there's a reason why you have all kinds of cults and all kinds of Hindu guys coming over here and promoting transcendental meditation and promoting reincarnation, and these things are being taught in our universities and our colleges. Young men are coming out, they look like you and I, but they're possessed. They're people that are controlled by the thoughts of the demonic ancient religion of Hinduism. And you see the symbols of it now on cars and things like that. This is an ancient symbol of the phallus, the unicorn. Aleister Crowley is an example of this. We already talked about him, but he said that while he was meditating, he saw that there was a great dragon underneath the pyramid. And he was quite a vampire, that guy. He would sharpen his teeth and bite people and suck their blood, and he was a very colorful character. But he was part of this whole movement, and many of our leading scientists and physicists in the area of atheism have donned a new form of religion, seeing that God is a force throughout nature. Modern science is depicting the new age of electronics as God now reaching out to man. Harry Price established the first legitimate research into the occult sciences. He was one of the first recognized ghostbusters. And he made it very popular, and today in Russia, like I mentioned before, the second largest outlay of means is for psychic research, and America's right behind them. Children are taught in school how to increase their ESP powers, and through a number of different mediums. This man is looking at a camera, and just his thoughts are printed on the paper. Pictures of ghosts, all kinds of stuff, psychics like this fellow, research in the occult, photograph of the energy fields. Who can escape it, you see? The world will be convinced. Edgar Cayce made popular the idea of the occult in medicine, and as a result, the occult has been the chief educating tool for even evangelical pastors. They'll go and take these classes in the healing sciences. But it goes back to the East. The idea of the acupressure points revolves around the ancient system of astrology and the energy fields. And people, through mental exercises, are supposed to allow the energy fields to flow through them into the victim and heal them. This places you in the hands of Satan. Now, Ellen White tells us that Satan will put diseases on people and then remove them. And it's happening in our own midst today. Now, the holistic movement is not a good thing. Not at all. It's taking something that we know was God's plan, and Satan is using it to bring people into the occult. The idea of holistic movement is the union of the body with the mind, the spirit, the universal spirit, the higher self, Satan. You see, it's not part of and of course we kind of are going along with this thing, but brethren, stay back. The concept of these energy fields, this holistic movement, is just leavening things everywhere in the world. The idea of using those energy fields to find water, and water witching may very well be legitimate, I don't know. But I'll tell you, there is an area that you pass through when you get into these things that you just do not know when it is the devil and when it might be some natural force. And Ellen White says that Satan will work through the electrical energies at the end of time. They believe that there's an electrical body bound up in your natural body, the astral body, and that through certain meditations you're able to travel in time, to leave your body and float around the room. It's now taught that certain jewelry is gaining the old value that it once had, and three-dimensional images are being used to draw on these cosmic forces. Magnetic fields that control our behavior. Astrology is on the rise again everywhere you go. The pyramid became the supreme symbol of the occult. For a long time, people are buying these little cardboard boxes and things to sharpen their razor blades in, but there was something in that pyramid. Pyramid means fire in the midst, and Bovis, a scientist, built a pyramid and put electronic equipment, and he found that energy was coming in from all four sides and shooting out the top. A powerful electromagnetic force works through that pyramid. Satan is the one that walked in the midst of the stones of fire. When he took dominion of this world with his mind, he influenced the electrical fields with his mind, and he has the power there, the prince and the power of the air that now worketh in the children of disobedience. Ouija boards are outselling almost any other game, and we find that the stores are filled with the occult games today that are bringing the kids into the occult. I was raised on fairy tales, dragons, and now those things aren't such a fearsome evil thing to me, and I know that they must be repulsive to someone who's filled with the heart of Jesus Christ. We have been sabotaged as individuals in this world, even by our own parents who didn't know. Disneyland is probably the greatest promoter of the occult. Here's Mickey Mouse as a wizard, a witch, a warlock, and we see in so many cartoons everywhere you go, demons are becoming the entertainers of our children, you see. And they will not be afraid. One movie that came out called Gremlin, the man that made it said it was to be the perfect child's nightmare. The little cuddly things turn into demons. Other movies are so vast we couldn't even mention them. The most popular game in the United States is Dungeons and Dragons. It teaches you how to be witches and warlocks and men that can control magic potions and stuff. It says in this article on it, when you can choose the character you want and acting out your deepest fantasies of your own heroism and send that character into the most fantastic and unexpected situations in search of valuable treasure, when you can see that character gain in experience and proficiency, you have not only got a profitable brain game, but a preparation for life. And they know this. The Jesuits know that if you gain the control of the imagination, you have control of the entire being and his destiny. Those books give actually witchcraft spells to be cast in those games. There's a reason why the occult is exploding today. There's a reason why the book Don Juan, a Berkeley student studying with an old Indian priest, eating peyote and going into these dreams and writing them out, became one of the most popular books on the campuses because it was all mystical during those times. There's a reason why the Krishna movement, the counterfeit of Christ, has risen again, and it's white Anglo-Saxon world that's traipsing after Krishna more than anything else, and it's a frightening thing when you see little children raised within those institutions with almost no hope in the future. Like Babylon the old, the Lord is going to have to stop it. He's got to stop it. He has to come soon. Witchcraft is rising everywhere. It's becoming prominent. It's behind the women's liberation movements, and everywhere you go, you see the outgrowth of this thing. Covens are everywhere. 13 people bound up in a coven under these sexual and blood oaths. And this was a picture someone took from National Geographic, and when they developed it, there was a lightning bolt across the front of it on the film. These are high school kids, elementary school kids that are brought in by their teachers. Keep your kids out of the public school system, I beg you. This book was never to be released under penalty of death. The Necronomicon, you can buy it in paperback, tells you how to call up demons and use them. Little children are learning how to be witches at early ages today. Churches are being raided, and black magic is being done right on the pulpits of churches across the land as there's no respect. Mass murderers are most often bound up with occult cults, and it's organized. These men are possessed by demons. The son of Sam leaned over the table when his interrogator asked him, "Who is Sam?" And he said, "Don't you know? Sam is the devil." And then I found in this manuscript I have by Brother Merle Vance that the hieroglyphs of the name Sam, and this was long before the son of Sam, the hieroglyphs of the name Sam come out in occult symbolism to the number 666. The devil is the 666 God, and the United States is going to set up that number in this country, the image beast. The Sukha Circle, an organization on sex education that counsels the NEA and the government, actually openly say little children should play around with sex at an early age as the animals do, and parents and children and all that, they encourage that kind of thing. The NEA is taking over the educational arena in the United States, and it's a bear because little children are being taken from their parents and educated for this kind of You know, if you want to keep them at home, they'll take them away for the whole school year and not release them to you until the summer months again. It's a sad thing that's happening. But these women are lesbians there. They're lesbians there behind a lot of this, and I don't think we should have anything to do with it. I'm going to have to go past a lot of these things. Children being taken from the parents, parents being thrown in jail in the United States. Science is unraveling the genetic code. Is biotech about to spawn a male biological age? One sin above another that caused the destruction of the antediluvian race was amalgamation. And today they can operate on the chromosomes. Friends, what is going to happen next? I believe God needs to draw it. Lucifer came down from this heaven. He was a magnificent angel with the power to create magnificent music. And when you look into the world of music, you see the musical instrument as a symbol in the occult of the powers of the gods. In the ancient rites and rituals, music was at the foundation of it. The beat became the foundation of demonic worship. The highest goal was to be possessed by the spirits of the devils, and in every culture since Babylon, at the foundation of initiation has been, in some way, the involvement of music to affect the nervous system. I would have nothing to do with those musics that are hypnotic. A good example is a taipusam. These people went into a trance through the use of the beat, and 10 years later, when the missionary that I talked to went back, he said they were using American rock and roll music to accomplish the exact same thing. This rhythm, this violent rhythm, is there to bring in the control of demonic spirits over the lives of these people. Pavlov discovered how to control the nervous system. Not only did he work with the bell and did he work with lights flashing, but he worked with the beat. And these men created a dual beat system where they ran two beats together, a fast and a slow, resulting in a collusion in the mind of the dog, and it destroyed the nervous systems of the animals. Lenin said, "You've saved the revolution." They bound that terrible beat in with old music forms that had been brought over from Africa and the pagan cults. It had been the foundation of gospel music, and now it was honed into a tool to destroy the public. Rock and roll, the term means sexual activity, from the gutters of the black communities there. And friends, when kids get involved in this, it works on them like a drug. They have no defense for it. They love it. It feels good. Why not? And there's nothing to stop it. It's everywhere. Radio, television. They can't get away from it. When they get into some of these performances, the sound is so loud. It's the sound of a jet. Like the sound of a jet going off an airport, 125 decibels. And many of these kids will put eggs along the stage, and when are in front of the speakers, and when they go up middle of the meeting, they have their lunch because the eggs are hard-boiled. From the energy that's flowing through, it's coagulating the proteins and the fat, and they're listening to that music while they're eating those eggs. They're fools. They're destroying their minds and destroying God's opportunity to reach them. The ears are damaged. The inner ear becomes damaged, and they can't hear as good anymore, and the music has to keep going up and up and up, and there's more nerves from those ears going to parts of your bodies than anything else. Just a few examples of people who have been destroyed by music. Janis Joplin committed suicide. The highest paid guitarist in the world at his time, Jimi Hendrix, became an occultist, a drug addict, and died in his own vomit. And we know of Elvis Presley, still the song's popular today, one of the longest running recording artists. He had everything to live for, according to this world. He died of an overdose, a sex pervert and a drug addict. Those early recording stars looked normal to me. They had combed hair and tie and the whole works. But as you watch, a change comes over, especially when the Beatles came over in 1963. They brought in the druid beat of the occult, and they mixed with it lyrics of sexual activities, and it created that irritation in the human system. When our culture said no premarital sex, the music says yes premarital sex, and the driving beat excited the kids to do it. It created the collusion that's created so much rebellion in our system. But in the White Album, they introduced early this idea of backmasting, encouraging the children to go to drugs, encourage them to follow the guidance of these men like Timothy Leary, who became a priest of LSD. What do the kids do? They believed it. They did everything they were told to do. They didn't even realize what was happening to them. They became revolutionaries. They became communists. They became immoral, amoral. Revolutionary bookshops opened up around the campuses that once had kids going to school with ties and suits, and now you could see the kids with long hair, unshaved, smelly, laying in the gutters, suffocating in their own vomit. I've walked along those streets and seen these kids' violence on campus. Here we have a situation where punk photography has affected so many and became a music form of perversion. These men would urinate on the audience, perform sex perversion in front of these teenagers. And the parents didn't know what was happening there. Throw themselves in the audience to get beat up to a pulp. Kids would sew razor blades in their clothing and bash into each other and bloody the floors and slide around, beat each other up. And pain was considered the ultimate turn-on. But monosexuality or bisexuality became the thing. And a performer that wants to make it big doesn't make it unless he flaunts the idea that he's both a male and a female. The ancient hermaphroditic religion of the past, AC/DC, means bisexuality. These men are Satanists, and it reflects on their record covers everywhere you look. Those record covers glorify death, perversion, suffering, and these are the most popular groups. I know there may be good groups, but the kids are being bound up and then they get drawn a little bit further and further along until the ultimate drug, hard rock, becomes interesting to them. When little Richard Penniman came out of that movement, he'd been a homosexual, he said that when I went on stage, I was possessed, and he knew for a fact that other stage performers, others that were into the occult, were actually casting spirits into the records and into the master tape so as to bring those children into the occult. Many of these peoples are witches, and this man brought that out. There he is studying the spirit of prophecy, and here he is preaching, and today he's traveling, doing preaching still. But if you look at the faces of these people, you see possession. You see possession. You see possession. You see Satan glaring out at the young people. This man's name is Alice Cooper. That's the name of a 15th century witch that claims to possess him. And when you look at that face, you see Satan holding a baby, the old offering of human sacrifices and such vulgar rites. Rod Stewart claims to be a Druid priest. Blue Oyster Cults covers their records with these satanic symbols of these bisexual creatures. And everywhere you look, you see that. Jim Steinman, Meatloaf, claimed to be possessed on stage. He'd do back handsprings, forward handsprings, and then they'd have to put him into a portable lung because his body wasn't doing it, and it couldn't stand the strain. Jimmy Page lives in Aleister Crowley's old house and does witchcraft satanic rites there. One of his records, called Houses of the Holy, had little naked children going up to an old Druid temple, and they were being offered as a human sacrifice. Kiss, Knights in Satan's service that flaunt themselves as demons, destroying the whole world in their Destroyer record. And sometimes on stage you see the winged serpent, the winged dragon. After they flaunted themselves for so long, eating blood, breathing fire on stage with the most popular group among the 13-year-olds in the United States, now, as their popularity waned, they took their clothes, they took their makeup off, and now everyone has to come out and see these Satanists again. They're evangelists for the devil. This group, Twisted Sister, couldn't get anywhere. They couldn't accomplish anything until they donned the satanic garb and began to flaunt it before the kids, and the kids came out. These mindless kids came out en masse. Judas Priest. And one of the most popular groups today is this group here. Come on, don't do that to me, you mind of mine. Well, it's Satan. You can see, I'll remember it in the middle. Motley Crue, and look on their foreheads, you'll see that pentagram. It's Satanism, and the children would do anything to get close. Quotes from recent publications, these girls are saying, I'll do anything. They can do anything to me just to meet them. That's all I want to do is meet them. I don't want to meet him, especially at night in the middle of a dream. It would be a terrifying experience. But there's the symbol of Satan there. This fellow here, he wasn't all that popular, but all of a sudden he made a tape, and this is what he looked like on that tape, Thriller. This is what he looked like on that tape, Thriller, and all of a sudden overnight he became a world superstar. He takes hormones to remain like a girl so his voice will stay high. But you look at those records covers and they're filled with occult symbolism, the cross, the scarab beetle, the pyramid, and so on, the eternal fire, the chakra points of Hinduism, or the Om, as George Harrison points out here. One record shows the pentagram and a naked man standing in it, as a witchcraft does when he carries out his activities in witchcraft. 1, 2, or 2, 1, 1, 2 symbolize both good and evil. Queen, live killers, and on one of their records, which would probably be this one here, they're doing a seance on the cover for the young people. Black Sabbath, 3 S's, 666. And one of their songs just sings revolution all the way through it, and that goes through the minds over and over again. Another one says, you're searching for your mind, don't know where to start, can't find the key to fit on your heart. You think you know, but you're never quite sure. Your soul is ill, but you will not find the cure. Your world was made for you by someone above, but you choose evil ways instead of love. You made me master of the world where you exist. The soul I took for you was not even missed. Lord of this world, evil possessor, Lord of this world, he's your confessor now. You think you're innocent, you've nothing to fear, you don't know me, you say, but isn't it clear? You turn to me in all your worldly greed and pride, but will you turn to me when it's your time to die? And this, it just goes to the kids' heads over and over again. One record shows the 3 angels smoking in gray outfits playing cards. Another one talks about being born again, and it's a devil's baby at born again. Another one under the skull says 666 on it, human sacrifice on the cover. Another shows a shroud from the gutters of a city with these faceless beings there, and it's got a face of the devil on it as a counterfeit of the Shroud of Turin. They're laughing at the Christian world, and they're taking the children away from the Christian families. This man here left the Black Sabbath group to go out on his own for a while, Ozzy Osbourne, but he flaunts the same thing, and he has tremendous population, especially when on stage he bit the head off of a bat and caught rabies. Biting the arms and the appendages and heads off of little animals, throwing their little quivering bodies out into the audience. It became a fad, and children were destroying little animals by biting them, eating them. It was a terrible thing, and he's still going strong. He may rejoin Black Sabbath again. That'll be kind of nostalgic, won't it? But this is him with his little girl. Madonna is flaunting symbolism of Christianity and purity before the young people. And there she is in a wedding garment with crosses all over her. Here's her record, Madonna, name taken from Mary, and the song is Like a Virgin. And yet, when you look at her, it's interesting. The back of her shows the symbol of the Illuminati, the symbol of Lucifer. Now, in northern Europe, the Teutonic invaders brought with them, the barbarians that weren't converted, brought with them the teachings of the northern European race, witchcraft. And you'll see this Aryan concept of old Nazism put out on these record covers, but this was the most startling of them all. Jim Steinman, now look, that is a fallen angel. And he's got golden wings. He carries a chain in his hands. He's broken free, you see, from his chains. And his guitar is his destroying weapon with a blade coming out of it. I know, he says, that I'm going to be like this forever. I'm never going to be what I should. And you think I'll be like this for just a little while? I know that I'll be bad for good. And oh, you see, so beautiful. Blonde, blue-eyed, northern European, bad for good. Satan is at the head of that movement. The golden-winged fallen angel. But this Aryan thing is all over the place today. Satan loves worship, and you see sometimes he places himself right on those records. He wants open worship. He wants an open Luciferian world where he's the God that gets worship, and he's going to have it. He's going to have it. But the children are being controlled by these men. There's a science behind this. That thing that looks like a big flying saucer, all that is a computerized controller for lights, for the programs that go on stage. Just you think about the old Pavlov and his study on the human nervous system. You know, there's a science behind this. Behind the Rolling Stones, in one film that was made, cameras were shooting out across the audience, and they could see that when they sang Sympathy for the Devil, fights broke out and a man was beat to death right below the stage. Then they changed to a softer song, and then the marijuana cigarettes lighted up across it. They know they control you. They know they control the millions that they're singing to across the country. And I won't go into this too deeply, but there's the different forms of dance that are created. You'd have to go into the occult to find the origins of these things. Punkers sit on the streets of some of our major cities today. Their goal is to have a peaceful demonstration against everything that's normal in society. What's the result? The fall in public school enrollment has alarming extent, is why the NEA and others are trying desperately to win back people to the public school system. This is why there's a crackdown on home education today. But the occult is there. Satan is there. One man who was involved in the spiritualistic movement of the Fox sisters, John Ballou Norborough, under spirit guidance, wrote the Owaspie Bible that tells that saucer beings came and started every religion in this world. All the way through the years, subconsciously, this has been implanted in our minds, in comic book, test book, fantasy, you see. And right along, there have been strange sightings that have been published in newspapers. This goes clear back to 1895 when this flying saucer was seen by the citizens of California in Sacramento. Another one seen a few years later in San Francisco, drawn up in the paper. Another one, again, seen on the Pacific coast. But they changed. Just as science changed, they were always just ahead of science, you see. And finally, we get to a time in our history when this spiritualist, Von Donigan, a time traveler, in a spirit seance where he claimed his spirit, that he was a time traveler and astral projection. He said he saw them come, and he sees them come back again. And now books are projecting that these things are true. These things are archaeologically true. Magazines, organizations are coming out supporting all of this. This was a book for children I bought in a public store, and it shows Ezekiel seeing the saucer come down, you see, and it shows these scientists with all these sightings presenting it as facts to the children. Movies are forming a foundation of belief, and then while the movies are going on one side as Satan's working on the subconscious mind, he brings things to the conscious mind. Reports of saucers landing in farmers' fields and the result of it photographed and published in papers and magazines as the ground is actually burned by them. Or the slaughter of cattle on the prairies as there's time and time again these supernatural operations done on these cattle that can't be explained by modern science. Officers of the law have seen them, people of all walks of life. Now there's not a city in the world where saucers have not manifested themselves for. And it reminds me of the spirit of prophecy. In the heavens soon will be seen sights and sounds of a supernatural kind. Heathen deities, it says in Testimonies to Minister 118, will manifest their signal powers before the world. And the result of this is going to be the Sunday law. These are just snapshots taken by people, little cameras, but these professional photographers took this in Switzerland. This farmer was being visited by, he claimed, beings from Pleiades who wrote a whole book for him. And that book I have at home, and these pictures are out of it. But something is happening. There's no denying it any longer. And I think, boy, I'm doing real well, folks. That's great. Praise the Lord. See, you don't have to sit through much of all this garbage, you know. No, it's not halfway. I think I'll be over in about 15 minutes. You're going to have lunch. Okay? Just praise the Lord. I'll tell you, this saucer thing is very big. A friend of mine had one appear to him on one of their sacred mountains. It came in over his house, and he said, "I rebuke you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ," and it disappeared. Many of these are just demons manifesting themselves in the form of flying saucers. Other people have had experiences where they thought they rode on one, but it's brought out only under hypnotism. And one man did a study in hypnotizing, a psychiatrist, did a study across the United States, and he says 1 out of every 15 people in America has had an experience with a UFO. Why? Because as soon as he brings them into hypnotism, it opens the door for Satan to bring that experience through their mind. And that from the prophets are on the earth. Ellen White says demons in human form are here. This man named Valthor claims to be from Venus. This man here says his name is Michael. He said his mind was opened up and he was filled with all this knowledge. And he's written many books. He has a cult that follows him there. But probably the most well-known is a man by the name of Uri Geller, where as a child he was sprayed by a ray from a flying saucer. And now he'll sit in a cave and these beings will communicate with him. Say that he's a prophet that's to prepare the world for the coming of the saucers. And he's been all across the United States bending spoons and things like that, you see. But probably the most prominent of these men is a man who's largely responsible for organizing vast organization of flying saucer churches. This is called the Aetherius Society. His name was George King. And he claimed to have an experience with Jesus Christ where Jesus told him to go to mountains around the world and charge them with energy so people could come and make contacts with extraterrestrial intelligences. This is one of those mountains, Mount Shasta in Northern California. Here's George King, the guy in the yellow outfit, and with his group making contact with the gods as they believe. This is a map of the U.S. The red areas where most of the sightings are, and you can see in Northern California over here on the west coast, up north, a big red area. That's where Shasta is. The largest concentration, of course, is where they do the testing. But these people long for the coming of Christ. Time and time again, their preachers, the men on stage, would go into a trance and a voice would come over, "My children, I long to put my arms around you. I'm coming soon." In one instance, Roy Pendleton said, one lady next to her started weeping, and she said, "How can we hasten the coming of the Lord?" And he started crying. He said, you know, he cried because he was so deceived. And here our people aren't even asking that question. Our people aren't even asking. It's a sad thing. He's produced material that show that the different shapes of the saucers all have a different function. And the government came out with similar studies because something's going on behind the scenes of government that showed that's exactly what they came up with too. The occult and the government coming up with the same story. People are taught how to make contact with these. A boy handed me a manuscript after one of my meetings, and he's given it up. And he handed that to me, and I did some reading in it. It's the same thing as old Hinduism. That's all it is. But now in a new guise. They say that God was an astronaut. Adam and Eve were astronauts. Ezekiel's vision was an astronaut. Everything in the Bible, and these people quote these things. Betty and Barney Hill had an experience with a flying saucer. That experience came out again through hypnotism. And they made a movie of it, and every year they'd show that movie, and everyone was terrified, looking at the heavens. This officer one night saw a light, and his car ran into a flying saucer. And it damaged his car. You know, that's a bad scene. It even bent his aerial and burned his eyes, and you can see a screech mark there. And for 2 miles before that, with the infrared photography, the whole area had been charged with energy. Something had happened, and UFO researchers came from all over the world. People that have seen these creatures have explained them. There was a museum on Pier 39 that showed some of these demons that have appeared to people, making it appear that there are beings that want to visit us from other planets, beings that want to help us into a new age of peace and prosperity, secret masters that have been guiding the evolution of mankind on this earth. In the 53 over Washington, the saucers came. They couldn't even get near them. And there was a terrible fear that this was in danger of national security. The government got involved in this thing. The Air Force was deeply involved in it right since the Second World War. 48, the government of the U.S. had already determined that flying saucers were beings coming from another planet. They had thousands of reportings during the war. The Germans saw these things, and the Americans saw them, the Russians saw them, and each thought everybody else was doing it, see? After the war, they all had to take a serious look that some other force was now invading the world. Some other force had to be contended with. The FBI worked with the CIA, worked with the Air Force intelligence to keep all this information from the people. But Donald E. Keyhole and a group of former government workers and people from the armed forces got an organization together, and finally they came up with the answer, what the government has been doing behind the scenes. This is a Navy intelligence officer that's swinging around in the chair and talking to him. He swung around, and he took a folder out of the cabinet, and he says, the Hydrographic Office of the Navy has verified an ancient chart. It's called the Perry-Reese map that goes back more than 5,000 years. It is so accurate, only one thing could explain it, a worldwide aerial phenomenon. And then it goes on to point out that after a long study, Mallory discovered the projection method used. Confirming this and other technical points, the Navy cartographers came to these conclusions. And this is it. Columbus had a map that had the coast of Yucatan, Guatemala, South America, the Straits of Magellan, and a large part of Antarctic coast. The original maps went back 5,000 years. Part of the land areas shown had been buried under ice for 20 centuries, but now we can see through soundings that that map, over 5,000 years old, is more accurate than any maps we've had up until our ability to make soundings through the ice. Okay? Only highly trained survey teams and cartographers could have produced charts of such amazing accuracy. But you see, they said these people couldn't have had airplanes. This couldn't have been anything from the earth because we find no factories. We find nothing that would give us an indication that that type of industry existed. So they had to be beings from outer space. They've come to these conclusions, A, B, C, D, E, and through science and through our government, we are being thrown into the hands of demonic forces. The government behind the scenes has backed one movie, one situation after another to bring this before the public, to prepare us for the coming of the saucers, to prepare us, the saucer people, they say we need them to prepare us to repel an invasion that's coming from Orion. I've read that in a number of places in occult material now. But this man here, he made it clear, MacArthur, that he believed the next world war would be fought with beings from outer space. It's interesting, isn't it? A man of real insight. But when the Outer Space Connection came out, it wasn't a science fiction movie. It was to prove archaeologically the existence of this. When this movie, Close Encounters, came out, it merged all religions into one thing and had a great event at the end of it that counterfeited the coming of Jesus Christ with a flying saucer. They gained the location from notes that came from Hinduism. We look at Star Wars, and there the teachings of the cosmic force of nature are put out before the minds of the children and embedded there in preparation for them to accept witchcraft. And then they can play with the toys. How much truth is there in Star Wars? One magazine, a UFO magazine from the 70s, brings this out. It says that since the beginning of the Ford administration and continuing with Carter, the government has been coming to the realization that these facts can no longer be hid. There could be a sudden crisis with an urgent need for quick mobilization. There, Star Wars was shown 6 months before it was released in the White House to the President, his cabinet, and representatives from other countries, even CIA. Why? Why was Star Wars so important? The answer is simple. It says Star Wars is successful because a large portion is absolutely true. Star Wars was conceived to condition the public to accept the danger of possible invasion from outer space. For 2 centuries, Johannes Kepler tried to solve the mystery that there should have been a planet between Mars and Jupiter. There was a discovery by Giuseppe Piazzi in Palermo, Italy, in 1801 that he found a 70 magnitude star there, a planetoid, and after that they have found many of them. There's a whole ring of asteroids in that area where a planet once existed. The late Dr. George H. Harrison worked in his later life, worked with contactees, and they all came up with one story. Satan is trying to bring a story to people, and that is that thousands of years ago there was a galactic federation, the Milky Way. Because of almost inconceivable tasks of governing it, they turned everything over to a robot or computer police force. The Earth-like Maldic, for example, began to experiment, they said, with atomic fission, a practice forbidden under the old human order. But they continued. The result was, finally, a chain reaction destroyed Maldic atmosphere in a searing blaze. Then the entire planet exploded. Not all the inhabitants were bad. Some of those inhabitants were taken by other planetary saucer people and brought to this Earth so they could start a world over again from here. And it talks about this infinite planet, Earth racked with volcanic fire and other natural catastrophes, a great flood, terrible plagues, and other events of biblical history. And they tie the Bible right into this whole. This is believed, you see, by men that are working behind the scenes in our government. Maldic, this planet, in this article here from an occult book, it quotes a passage from the Bible. It says, Lucifer, how art thou fallen from the heavens, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how art thou cast down to the ground. Maldic is called that bright star that exploded and was destroyed, and the beings were brought down to this planet. In Star Wars, this discovery is made in the movie as they come into this, they find that a planet is now gone, and in its place are these meteors. The non-human characters in Star Wars, such as 3PO, Wookiee, Jawa, and so on, they're entertaining to the kids and the audiences. The reason is because any UFO investigator knows that these are more real than the characters in the film as they're brought from the files. Demons are educating are entertaining our children. Lucas had an experience with flying saucer, and this, I'm sorry, the first part of the quote isn't here. It says that we need to be part of the Space Confederation, that the dark forces are soon coming from Orion, and we have to be ready to repulse that invasion. E.T. has been posed as the God of this age. You see that symbol of the 2 fingers, a symbol of God creating man. This little children's book shows the story. I don't even like to show these things. It shows the story. Flying saucer comes down. These beings are thousands of years old. They come down. A little boy surprises one of them. They make fast friends. The being takes control of the boy's soul, control of his mind. Everything that happens to one happens to the other. Sympathetic magic from the occult. And then this little being is taught English. He acts like a little baby. Everybody falls in love with him. It's half of a comedy. Then he dies, you see, and to save the little boy who's dying as a result of their soul being united. Then he dies. He dies first, and then he raises himself up from the dead. He died to save the little boy. Then he raises himself up because he's going to have to go away now. He's going to have to go away and leave his disciples behind, all his disciples, even the dog. Because see, nature is part of the New Age movement. Kisses their Messiah goodbye. And then the last scene, touching. Everybody's crying their heads off. You see, they fall in love with this thing that looks like a lizard. And to me, that's a manifestation of Satan himself. But he puts his finger on the forehead of the little boy and he says, I will be with you always. Here. The third eye. That mystical area where Satan can manipulate people's feelings and emotions. Spielberg says, I did this, I tried to create a creature that only a mother could love, and he took things about little babies and worked it into this so that people would naturally be drawn to it. Flying saucers are hitting us from every direction. Rock and roll music, toys, you name it. And probably the biggest thing of all is this idea of video games. It says up at the top, alien creatures in the home through video games. And one movie came out, and this boy played video games, and the reason for the video games is because beings from other planets were watching him, watching for a guy who was good enough to help them out in their Star Wars. And then they came down from the heavens and took this kid that was good at video games. UFOs converting the disbelievers with science, you say. Now this is probably the most startling article that I can read. UFO Magazine. It binds in the ideas of Catholic miracles with UFOs. Now, I think I missed something there, didn't I? There it is. Okay, there it is. You know, Catholic miracles are taking place at a higher rate now than they ever have in history. Every other day in the newspaper, Catholic miracles, weeping Madonnas, bleeding hands, bleeding statues. In this situation, the people are looking at blood from a saint that's supposed to liquefy every certain year. But the most powerful of all was in 1968 in Zaitung, Egypt, when Mary appeared above the cathedral there and flying saucers took place over her heads. Before the turn of the century, Reverend Jerome Palmer carried out in Wales, and oh no, this is another one here, wrote a history about Our Lady returns. Okay. Okay, now this is referring to the Wales Protestant revivals, and it describes here great shafts of light. The people were transfigured. They spoke in tongues. Orbs of light would stream from the heavens. Hundreds of people were witnesses of these displays. It was a Protestant Christian revival in Wales, the British Isles. Now, I have to skip a lot of these folks. I'm sorry, but if you get the video, you can read them. You just put pause, see? Anyway, the lights returned with a woman preacher. And this woman preacher even had more flying saucers and stuff appear at there. And then finally, this is Mrs. Mary Jones, a woman preacher who had received the claim of direct call from God to preach. Powerful. Wherever she went, the area light seemed to follow her. But the biggest thing was at Fatima. This was something that was to shock the world. The mysterious aerial disc made a startling recovery in 1917. 70,000 people watched what happened there. And at the height of this phenomenon, the first figure to manifest was an apparition of a man who appeared from the mist and comforted the children. He said, "Do not fear, don't fear." The climax of this whole situation with the manifestation of Mary there at Fatima was this. She said, Mary said, this demon in the skies of a human being said, "September 17th, I'm going to do a miracle that will astound the entire world." So the people gathered, and this was the miracle. The darkened skies suddenly began to illuminate. The cloud bank departed and revealed a great shiny disk in the heavens, and it came flying down before the people. In terror they scattered. This was the miracle to astound the world, a flying saucer. I asked Alberto about this. "Oh yes," he says. The flying saucers will support the Roman Catholic Church in the end, you see. Spiritualism will support the religious teachings of the day. Friends, this is coming. There is nothing to stop it. It's going to come. All it's waiting for is God's people to begin the work. One television program called V on Friday nights, and V, there's your V, symbol of the serpent. These beings from outer space on this program will take their skin off. I've never seen it. People just told me about it. They'll pull their skin off and they'll have the face of a lizard underneath. You see, that Satan is telling people something, and then he laughs as they just think this is silly or hokey. This man here, Officer Shermer, drew a picture of the saucer being he saw it, and on his chest there was a winged serpent. When the ecumenical movement came into being, it made a platform by which the saucer movement and spiritualism could work with the religious, because they started breaking down the differences between all religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, all religions are encouraged to grasp hands now. Even the Jews are being browbeat into this union. But this is at the World Council of Churches in their room there, and this was donated by an American family, the Dulles, I believe, family, I'm not sure. But I want you to look at the Christ of the World Council of Churches. He's bald, and he's naked down to his waist, and he's nothing more than an occult priest in the nimbus. It's satanic. This movement is no good that's taking place today, and we need to cry out against it because it signals the end of freedom in the world today. This Star Wars thing, all these things that are happening are important for what is going to come in the near future as destruction destroys the Western world. This is our future, folks. There's no way around it. We have to keep this before our eyes because it's so easy to try to look into the future and plan our future in such a way. It's time to let go of the world, let go of everything, and go out for Christ and throw yourself into Him, into His mercy. We have to go to the Bible, and the Lord says, "Sanctify them through thy word is truth." The Bible is everything to us, and at one time in our history in the future, the truth will be more important than all besides. We'll break family ties, organizational ties. We'll break every human tie, and as an individual controlled by the Spirit of God, we'll go out and give message, and we won't worry about the consequences. I long for that time, and I think that we have to make plans right now in our personal study, our personal relation with Jesus Christ, so when God says go, there won't be 1 minute's hesitation. We'll know His voice, and all that men can say won't stop us. Jesus wants desperately to minister today. Scarcely, this knowledge of righteousness by faith, scarcely can the human mind comprehend the breadth and depth and height of the spiritual attainments of Him who gains this knowledge. Acts of the Apostles 5:31. Friends, God is calling us home first, and through us to call the world home. And friends, there isn't any more time. How many times is He going to call us? How many times is He going to ask us to stand up and speak out? We're expecting the denomination to do it. It will never be. God knocks at individual doors, and He's going to call people out of the world. And friends, we can be foremost in that movement. Even now, it's not too late. If you as individuals will take personal responsibility for giving this message, well, one day we're going to fly through those planets. It's our home. Jesus has made it for us. Don't let anything stand between you and having that home. Let's bow our heads. Dearest God in heaven, dearest Lord, we love you. I pray that you work on hearts here, and that there'll not be one missing in that day when you come to bring us home. In Jesus' name, amen.